Hello, good morning, welcome to Tenerife and session 1 of this module 7 on how to lose weight on a plant-based diet. This is a really important module, I know, for lots of us, because we're all interested in how to lose weight, because obesity and being overweight is linked to so many poor health outcomes. It's really worth taking it seriously and finding a diet that will work for us going forward forever and not just short term. But you know, over the recent years, really being overweight and being obese has become the new normal, hasn't it? I mean, when we go to the service station on the motorway, or we go to the shops, it's so apparent that we've all put weight on over the years, and a lot of people think that that it's down to self-discipline, that the reason that we've put weight on, the reason that we've put on the pounds, the reason that people have become obese, and the reason that we're getting all these lifestyle diseases is because we completely lack any self-control, that we're somehow weak, that we're not self-disciplined, and we're just given into temptation all the time. And this is an opinion that's held, but it's not true. It really isn't true. Even me, I'm a thin guy, I'm carrying a few extra pounds, and even for me, you know, we've been conned by lots of different industries and interests and corporations and even the government. But before we start that, it's interesting to compare where we are now to where we were just 100 years ago. You know, 100 years ago, people were not dying of heart disease or cancer or any of these lifestyle diseases. They were dying of infections. Infections were the big killers. People, tuberculosis, influenza, these were the diseases that were killing people. And these other lifestyle diseases from which people die now, they really didn't play that much of a role. And now we've gone full circle, and very few people now die of infections, and we're all dying from these lifestyle diseases, many of which can be preventable. And you know, it's also not a very nice thing to be overweight. Obese people suffer from so much discrimination, and you know, it's just not fair. I mean, that we're obese and fat people are being discriminated against simply because of the way they're reacting to the environment that's around us. I mean, we're surrounded by an environment that just completely encourages us to eat and enjoy food. So there was one report that actually said, quite unbelievably, they found some overweight and obese people, and that had managed to lose a lot of weight and get back to a more or less to a weight that they were happy with. And they actually said that they would rather lose a limb than go back to being obese. That's how horrible it must be to be completely overweight and heavy, and I think it's to do with discrimination and everything else. But this session is about explaining why this obesity epidemic, the way that we've all put on so many pounds, that it really isn't our own fault. So why do we put on weight, or why do we find it difficult to lose weight, is maybe also an interesting question. Well, it turns out that physical activity, I mean, we all think, don't we, that, you know, if we could all be more physically active, we would lose weight. It's something that we all just take for granted. But when researchers actually dug down into the stats, actually whether you're physically active or not doesn't really make a great deal of difference as to whether we lose weight. Physical activity doesn't really account for that much additional calorie burn. And I was surprised to learn that the biggest the biggest drain of calories is actually our metabolism. So basically, just by being alive, we're burning the calories, and obviously if we do some physical activity, that burns more calories, which helps us to lose weight. But the contribution made by physical activity is not that great. Another thing that isn't responsible, not really anyway, for our weight loss, it turns out, is our genes. I know a lot of people think, and I know I certainly did, that genes are responsible for the fact that we put on weight. But a lot of research now has been done into genes and also epigenetics, and it turns out that our genes, I mean, obviously some of us have a predisposition to being either thin or fat. That's clear, nobody would deny that. But it turns out that the genes, it's like our genes load the gun, but something else pulls the trigger. It's not enough just to have genes that make us more likely to become overweight. Something else has to happen to trigger those genes to make us put on the weight. So what could that thing be? What could it be? Well, it turns out, probably not surprisingly, that it's the food that we eat. And interestingly, it's not so much the actual foods that we eat. It's not so much the amount of food that we eat, but the type of food that we eat that seems to make a huge difference to whether we put weight on or not. We've got to remember as well, I think what a lot of times what we tend to forget is that our bodies, we're designed to be as efficient as possible. Our bodies want us to survive. Our bodies still think that at any point there could be a famine. You know, we were throughout our evolution, we were always plagued by famine. So at any time there could be a famine. So what does our body do? Our bodies, quite naturally, when there's excess food or excess calories or excess fat, our bodies want to be able to store that energy for famines that are probably going to come. This is what our bodies think. Our bodies obviously weren't designed for a modern society where food is in abundance and there's not a lot of chance of there being a famine. So our bodies are just reacting completely naturally to the environment in which they find themselves. I mean, our bodies are designed to be so calorie efficient. That's the design. So I wanted to know. So yesterday I was looking on the internet and doing some research, and I wanted to find out when the obesity epidemic really started to get worse and worse. And I found a graph, and the graph seems to point, as far as I could make out, it seems that we started to get heavier as a society and around the year 1982. So I wanted to then find out what happened in 1982. Well, several things happened that seem to have all come together to conspire against our waistlines. And the first one was the real proliferation of high fructose corn syrup. So this is where they fill the fields with corn, but it's not the corn you can eat. If you actually taste it, it doesn't taste very good at all. And they use this corn to make what's called high fructose corn syrup. And it's in literally everything now. This ingredient is used in everything because it's so cheap for the food companies. For the food corporations, it's a dream because it costs virtually nothing. It makes food sweet, and so they can make these cheap products and sell them at a high margin. Marketing came in as well. Marketing got more sophisticated, more advertising, more colourful pictures, more suggestive marketing, making us triggering our minds to want more of these very tasty but nutritionally poor foods, and foods that were also causing us to get fat. The food companies are driven by profits, of course. You know, the food companies, all they care about is making a profit. They're not really interested in whether the food that they're giving us is healthy or not. All the food companies want to do is make a profit for their shareholders. So if they can take cheap fats, cheap sugars and cheap salt, all of the things that we crave as a species, and blend them together to make some delicious product that we also get addicted to, they will do that regardless of the health consequences, regardless of how addictive it might be, regardless of whether it might make us become ill later in life. None of that matters. The only things that matters to the food companies is, can they make a profit, and they want to maximize their profit. So I think it's really important that we always remember this when we're thinking of buying foods, that it's a profit driven business. It's not a health driven business. Another thing is there's no money in broccoli. There's no money in fresh foods. You know, the foods that are actually healthy and good for us, there's not really a profit in them. You can't brand vegetables. You can't, and they go off, of course. You know, if produce, first of all, you have to grow it, which costs money and time. Then you have to store it in a specific way, or it goes bad. So these are not the products that these global corporations want to be concentrating on. Global corporations, big companies, want those cheap to manufacture products that will last a year or two on the shelves, because it makes the whole production system so much more efficient and enables them to make lots and lots of profit. So first of all, always remember that these food corporations have been doing this now for years and years and years with the sole desire to earn a profit, regardless of whether it's been causing us to put on so much weight, which of course it has. The food industry spends $20 billion on advertising every year, and most of that is not for our health. And these $20 billion go into making us crave these unhealthy foods, which make us fat. And I'm going to explain in detail a little bit later how that process works, that why the foods that we're eating are much more likely to make us become fat than other foods that we could eat a lot of that wouldn't have that same effect on our bodies. Another thing that happened after the 1980s, I think, is that food has become omnipresent. I used to go to the Sheffield railway station in the 1980s, and it was a food desert. There was a drinks machine, so where you could put in some money and get a drink, and there was one buffet. It was called a buffet. It's like a convenience store on the station where you could go in and you could buy yourself a British rail sandwich. But that was it. There was very little choice. There was no, most of the trains had no food on the trains. Now, if you go on a train in the UK, they've all got one of these trolleys that comes round and brings round the food. None of that existed in the 1980s. There were some trains with a buffet service, but you actually physically had to get up, go to the bar, order something. But now the trains, they come round with a trolley. Would you like a coffee? Would you like some more of this sugary crap, sir? It's true, isn't it? It's everywhere. And if you go down to railway station today, Sheffield Midland station today, there are convenience stores on every corner. Coffee, sandwiches, burgers. It's everywhere. So food has become omnipresent. So if we think about all of these things together, that the food industry has been creating these concoctions that are highly delicious and highly addictive, that marketing has gone up, has been ramped up, that convenience stores are on every corner, that food is being pushed at us at every turn. And in addition to that, the actual ingredients of the foods that we're eating is far more likely to make us fat. It's really not our fault that we put on so much weight. And what it means is that you're not lazy, I'm not lazy, we're not lazy. We don't have the wrong genes, and we shouldn't be exercising more. I mean, if you want to exercise more, that's brilliant, but it's not something that we should feel guilty about. It's the food. It's the food that we've been eating. It's the food that the corporations have been creating. And it's the ingredients that they've been putting into it, and all designed to make us addicted. So before we get a little bit deeper into this module, which is going to be absolutely fantastic, that's the message I want to leave you with today, that really all of this is by design. The governments have acquiesced to the corporations. The corporations only care about making a profit. And all of this drive, all of this greed on behalf of these companies have led to the obesity epidemic that we have today. And if you're on this course, you probably also thinking that you would like to lose weight. But we're going to do that because there is a fantastic, almost hidden way of losing weight without going hungry. And we're going to dig into that a little bit later in this module. But for this session, that's it for today. Thank you for being there with me this morning, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. So don't get tempted today by any of these foods that have been made to get you addicted. So think about that when you go out today and you see some of these convenience stores. Thanks for being there. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.